pretty sure that when you are talking on the podcast, you have to just talk like right into the microphone.
You're really getting in there. Wow.
But then it sounds now I sound like I'm on the radio. Ladies and gentlemen.
You do have a face for radio.
Oh my God, I have a face for radio. That's so rude.
Well, welcome to the show. This is our first episode of the 2448 podcast, and we decided for the first one, we're going to put you in the hot seat to talk really about your 48 and your path and journey and life in being a first responder and a business owner. And so I'm going to ask you all the big questions.
Sounds good. That sounds right. Thanks for having me. So tell everybody who you are. I think it's important to kick it off.
Yeah, I'm Kaoma. I'm the Chief Operating Officer here at HiViz. I joined the business with you about 10 years ago, also because we're married. That's really how it all started.
I love it.
Yeah, Sam is very entrepreneurial and not so great at structure, as you'll start to learn in the show. And so I came on just to keep things straight.
Well, awesome. Well, you want to jump in?
Yeah, let's do it.
All righty.
Sam, I think it's important to start from the beginning of your journey really as a student in school, because from what I know, a lot of the principles and practices that you learned through that period, we still use in business today. And so just to start off, tell us about Sam Massa as a student in school.
Sam as a student. I hated school. I was not a great student. And, when I think about school, I always try to figure out ways to leverage business or leverage unique creative ways of getting out of class. So it was
Why though?
I wasn't a great reader and writer. I'm pretty dyslexic, and so I don't write like everybody else. I don't read. Like, my computer reads all my emails today. And so his name is Alex, if you ever meet him. But I didn't enjoy the classroom because what they were focusing on, especially in early school, was teaching me how to read and write, and it wasn't my thing. And so I remember in school just being any opportunity, whether it was, I played the cello for a long time. And so whether it was I remember in fourth grade, they said, hey, if you want to go join the orchestra, you can leave class. And I was like, oh, hell yeah, sign me up. Or if there were little business opportunities, I figured out a way to become the DJ for a while for these little school events. And
tell me about that. What got you interested in DJing?
When I was little, when I was maybe, second grade or so, I saw one of the PTA moms set up speakers for field day. And they paid her to play music on the PA speakers or whatever. And so when she would play music, I thought it was really interesting that she was kind of she would press a button and the kids would be like, oh my God, this lady's awesome. She played the song for me. So I kind of watched her do that and elevate her social status by pressing play every time she was doing that. And I thought, they're paying this lady and everyone loves her. There's got to be a way I can do that too. And so I started, I actually had a birthday party when I was real little, and a lot of the kids at school wanted, they were looking for things to do for their parties. And so I didn't have a lot of them come to my birthdays often. And so
not a big friend group.
No, I had a pretty small friend group. And all the popular kids were the ones I wanted to be friends with, but they weren't really friends with me. And so what I did was I invited them over to a birthday party, and I told them that it was going to be DJ'd. And I had saved some money. I think I got a speaker for Christmas, and I decided I was going to be a DJ. And then I bought another speaker because I mowed grass and scrounged up some side money. Anyway, was not a DJ, but I pretended I was a DJ, and I played music at my birthday party. And we played laser tag or water balloons or something, and it was great. And all the kids were like, oh my God, Sam's a DJ. So then I started a little business when I was I don't know, in some middle school age, to do DJing, and began doing events for my friends for their birthdays or for their siblings' birthdays, that sort of thing. And the business started to grow. But I guess to answer your original question though, the goal when I was in school was figure out how I could not be in school, or figure out how I could do something other than what the teachers wanted me to do, which was sitting in class and reading and writing or doing whatever. And so I found, whether it was DJing or it was the orchestra or it was any extracurriculars, I always was trying to figure out how I could kind of pave my own path. And what I found was that business was the way I could write my own script, and people generally, gravitated towards that as a positive thing, as opposed to oh, this kid's just a bad student. It was oh, this guy's into business.
So when you were having those early struggles in school though, did you just want to get out of class because you didn't like class, or your intention was always I'm going to do business anyway, so I don't really need to follow the traditional path? Did you put those two things together? At
the time, I don't know that I was that intentional. I wish that I was. I mean, I think I actually did. Later in school, I was intentional. It was I want to go do business. I don't want to go do school. In early school, it was I just want to do anything but sit here in the classroom. And so, I think that transitions, because when you do things a few times, it's an accident. When you do things more times and you begin to recognize a pattern, then that can become intentional. And so for me, in later school, middle school and high school, business was the purpose. In elementary school, I mean, like no kid running a business. I was doing like a lemonade stand and doing like, whatever. Like it was.
And trying to get popular by being a DJ.
Yeah, exactly. Trying to get popular. Exactly.
They're the important things.
They are. Exactly. I thought so anyway.
Did you do anything? Did you leverage any of the school resources to practice business or try a few of your early ideas?
I was in real early days, I was a part of the UMTV News, which was the school local news program. And funny, we had a studio that was not as cool as this studio, but it was like, funny enough, it was set up in a similar way to this. It was in the old music room. And I thought that tech was so interesting. And I got to leverage, whether it was the school equipment, like the UMTV News studio, I was like, 9 or whatever. Or if it was, even the computers. I mean, I did have a computer at home. I was fortunate when I was young. I mean, it was like still early computer days, but my dad was in the tech space, so we had a computer at home. And so no, but I mean, I did leverage whatever was happening at school, whether it was a function or an event. I would always try and put into whether it was the DJ or it was early days using the news studio, or always kind of being resourceful around the school. The schools became a customer of mine, and in the DJ business, and then I would always, of course, I would bid on those projects and oftentimes won them because I had no expenses and the real DJs did. So
the lemonade stand, the lawn mowing, and then the DJ business, from what I know of the story, it did all end up tying together where you bought a vehicle to run the DJ business or promo the DJ business.
Yes.
But something in school then prompted like what came next, and that was a biofuels business.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was funny. When I was young, one of the things I was always interested in, just observing all the time, kind of keeping my eye on patterns and trends and things. And one of the things I really thought was interesting was the mechanics behind the school bus door mechanism. And so I'd always been into...
The school bus door specifically.
Yeah, the school, like the yellow bus.
Interesting.
And I don't have those in Australia, but they're awesome. Actually, I love those things so much. Anyway, the school bus door is, I thought that was very unique. And when I was real young, the bus driver, I made friends with her because I didn't have many other friends. And Miss Barry, the bus driver, she let me close the door behind me when I would get on the bus.
Wow.
It was a big deal.
That's pretty cool.
One day she let me talk on the radio.
Wow.
It was like, and now I'm a ham radio operator.
True, yeah.
KJ4 SYR mobile. Just catch me on the air. It's cool. Yeah. But anyway, the bus driver, Miss Barry, did let me do the door mechanism, and I thought that was really cool. And anyway, this will get around to biofuels. But the long story short is that one day she told me they were getting a new bus, and the new bus was going to be a Thomas bus, safety liner MVP ER, which meant the engine was in the rear and that it was going to have a pneumatic door instead of a mechanically actuated door. And it like completely broke my heart. And so I told her, I was going to reach out to Thomas Bus and find out more information about this thing before we got these doors. And so I reached out through the internet. I sent a contact form and said, my name is Sam. I'm from the school system, and we've got these new buses coming, and I don't see any information on your website about the school bus door. And the bus company reached back out, and they were like, Mr. Massa, we're so sorry. Here's some information. They sent me some information on the door. Anyway, I was fascinated by the vehicle, the door mechanism, and began kind of a lifelong relationship with Thomas Bus that turned out to be really fun and has progressed over the years. But I was fascinated by the mechanics of the vehicle.
Did they take you seriously? Did they know that you were just some kid?
Originally, I think they did, probably more so than they needed to, because they thought I worked for the schools. Because I just sent an email and it was just like, hey, I'm Sam from Fairfax County or whatever.
Yeah.
And I want this question about this bus. And so I think they thought I actually was an employee, like someone that purchased vehicles. But instead, I wasn't. And so one day they invited me, like, hey, if you're ever in the area, here's the information you requested. If you're ever in the area, please come by and we'll give you a tour. And so we were in the area. We were going down for a family vacation or coming home from a vacation, and I convinced my dad to stop by. So we stopped in. They were like, "Wait, you're the one we've been emailing with?" And they gave me a whole tour. It was great, but anyway, it was fun. But to answer your original question, to tie it back, on the bus, I was interested in the door mechanism. Was the first mechanical thing I thought was really cool. The second thing was it was a diesel engine, and our vehicles at home were just like normal gas cars.
Okay.
And so it was different and it was unique and it sounded different and operated different. I wanted to know why, like everything had a why behind it. And so I had kind of begun this interest in that. And then also on some of the buses, not the bus I rode, but some of the buses, had handicap lifts on the side of them. And I thought that was a really unique kind of mechanical device. It's awesome. Like, how do you take someone from the ground level and put them that high up? But anyway, so kind of it transpired and continued to be something that those three interest categories, mechanical actuation, diesel engines, and those areas were always themes throughout my business growth and interest growth. And as I went through school, that was early business days or early, not even businesses, but I've kind of built on that in different businesses, just being interested in paying attention to like those little details.
And you worked that into the DJ business by buying a bus, right?
Yeah. So I just thought the school bus was awesome. And so I did. My first vehicle was actually a school bus. I bought it on eBay. It was $800.
Same.
And and it was funny though, because I was 14. And so I always used business to make the rules more flexible. And so you're not allowed to buy a vehicle when you're 14 years old because you need, number one, a driver's license. Number two, you need to be older. Yeah. And so, but you can own a business, and you got to have your parents be the legal custodians of the business. But either way, you can own a business, and a business can buy a vehicle, and a business can insure a vehicle, and the business doesn't have to schedule the drivers when you do the insurance. And so, like, I'm 14 years old, they weren't going to give me insurance, but the business can be done. So long story short is I bought a school bus because I love school buses and because it had that mechanical lift, the handicap lift, and you would wheel the heavy speakers and stuff that I needed to take for the DJ shows. A lot of times we're doing shows in schools. And so I'd need to pull them in the loading dock, and the loading dock was the same height as the back of the bus. So we bought a short bus, and I would wheel the equipment on, pick it up, load it into the back of the bus. I paid a high school kid to drive it.
I was going to say, how did you get to events if you weren't allowed to drive?
Yeah, so I wasn't old enough, but one of the local high school kids, it was a friend of mine in the tech theater class, was he was like, I got a driver's license, I'll drive the bus. So he would drive it to the events, and I would ride shotgun or whatever. But we had to take all the seats out because you can't insure it. A school bus is a school bus if it has a stop arm, red lights, and passenger seats. So, and you have to have a commercial driver's license if it has air brakes. So it didn't have air brakes, and we deleted all the seats so we could take it to events, and Rick drove it around. It was a lot of fun. So,
all right. So you have the school bus, you were doing the DJ business, but this fascination with the diesel engine was another thing that remained.
Yeah. So as school continued to grow, at some point the school bus is only cool like when your friends don't matter. And like when I was little, I kind of just let not having a ton of friends not be that important to me. But at some point, like, I'm 14 or 15 or getting ready to drive, and it's like, yeah, I want to impress the ladies. Yeah. So school bus isn't going to do that for you. Yeah. So I was like looking at, okay, what am I going to drive as a vehicle? And the school bus can't be my daily. And I was so interested in the diesel engine from the school bus days. I thought, okay, well, obviously I'm going to buy a diesel vehicle. Like somehow the DJ business was going. I was making pretty decent money. And I thought, okay, well, I'll buy a diesel vehicle. And so when you look at the gamut of vehicles that are available, the most technically interesting and complex unique vehicle that I could think of was the original H1 Hummer. And I was like, that's the ticket. I had no idea that they cost as much as they did, but I was like, that's the ticket. So age was, I was getting closer to driving age. And of course, like every kid, you ask your parents. And my folks were really nice and were really generous, but they weren't going to buy me a H1 Hummer. And I was 16. And so my dad was like, look, I'll help you. But I mean, there's just no chance. So I had to raise the funds, mowing grass, DJing, saving every penny I could put together to buy this thing. But I did. I bought a 1997 and a half AM General H1 Hummer. It was awesome. And it had a diesel motor in it, a 6.5 liter turbocharged diesel motor. And it was great. And I drove it to high school. One of the things that happened though in school was, I wasn't a great student. I mean, I could fake the test because like the material I knew well, but the actual structure, process. Yeah, it was like the structure sucked, and like they would grade me on homework. Well, if I knew the material, then why the hell was I going to do the homework? That was stupid. Or like they would grade me on how organized my binder was. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. My binder organization isn't going to mean that I'm a better scientist if I was in chemistry class or like whatever. So I always tried to kind of buck the system. But anyway, at some point in high school, in 9th grade, I went to a local public school, just normal school, and it just wasn't going to be sustainable. Like I wasn't fitting into that mold. They weren't fitting around me. Because I was a pretty different learner, and I needed some accommodations on tests and in the classroom. It made more sense to go to a smaller, like little private school. And I can't ignore the fact that I was fortunate enough that my parents were able to provide that for me. But I did go, and it was great. And but even there, in a more flexible school, it still wasn't like a perfect fit. And the little school I ended up going to was kind of like this hippie, funny high school that was, everyone called teachers by the first name. And
a lot looser structure. It sounds
way looser. Oh, there was like 5 people in a class. I mean, it was like literally we could do whatever we wanted. I turned a class into, there was this genocide going on in Darfur. And so we turned a class, there was supposed to be like some really boring class. And we're like, why don't we just do a conference? We do an educational event. We get our local congressmen and senators in, and we teach about and we hear about what is going on in Darfur and see if we can't, do some good things to help out in that space and raise awareness. And so that became a class. And so organizing this whole event, bringing in the senator, it was Congressman Moran came to it, and some of my friends. And I wasn't like ever a big political activist or like one of these people that does that. But I learned what it's like to go to Capitol Hill, to ask people to come to an event, to schedule that sort of thing. Got to use my DJ and lighting experience to do that. And I actually worked with this one teacher that originally when we first met, this lady's name is Beth. And Beth was awesome in so many ways for me as a student and as a person. But we are about as oil and water as it possibly gets. And so one day I pull up in the Hummer, and Beth, so her background, she was like Sea Shepherd, Greenpeace, like super activist, like save the planet.
Nice.
And I was not like even a little remotely interested in saving the planet. I was interested in monster trucking through the woods at 100 miles an hour, burning diesel fuel and like kicking the baby seals in the face. It wasn't kind of my, that was my 16 years old, had a small brain, whatever. So Beth tells me, you're single-handedly destroying the planet with this thing and you're going to hell for it.
Wow.
In not so many words. And I'm like, oh, thanks, Beth. I love you too. And she's, back and forth. I was in this like environmental science class and she was telling me all the reasons why it was just terrible that I was driving this thing to the school. And this is when, 10 years ago, fuel was $5.39 a gallon. It was like a big deal. Now it's $6. But either way, it was like, that was the first time diesel had been that expensive. And so I was motivated by the cost of this thing to operate, but I didn't care about the environmental side. And Beth was like a diehard environmentalist. And so she told me, listen, if you can just get this through your little capitalist brain, you could burn vegetable oil in this truck and it would cost you a whole lot less. I was like, oh, it would cost me less to burn cooking oil in this diesel truck? And she's like, if you're going to drive a diesel vehicle, you might as well at least burn biodiesel at the time because at least it's environmentally friendly. And for you, it'll be less expensive. And I was like, all right, Beth, I will join your environmental coalition if you will teach me how to make this, because if I can save money, then hell yeah, call me an environmentalist, call me whatever you want to call me. If I can save money, let's do it. So it was really funny. We kind of forged this friendship where she brought me a magazine that talked about how to make biodiesel. And
did you try to make it?
We did. So we had a little, like at school, we had like this chemistry lab. And so we did a little test batch there. I did a very, very small test batch on the bench and it worked. Okay. And then I went back and later tried to build a bigger test batch. And biodiesel, the way it works is you have to chemically alter the vegetable oil. Okay. And so you remove a glycerin molecule and you insert an alcohol molecule in its place, basically. And it's called transesterification. But anyway, that process, because you use methanol and lye, methanol is flammable and lye is caustic. It's not super, not safe, but it's not super, like 16-year-old kids shouldn't be doing this in their backyard.
Okay, it's kind of volatile.
Yeah, it's volatile, exactly.
Okay.
So anyway, I tried making a bigger batch than our first sample batch and I caught the lab on fire. It was a little, it wasn't a big fire. It was like, but clearly it was like,
those flames.
This is an issue. Yeah, it was an issue. Okay. So the secondary batch is like, I was thinking about how could I do this on a big scale? Because I was burning, the Hummer gets 6 miles to the gallon, 8 miles to the gallon. So I was burning a ton of diesel fuel, $30,000 a year in fuel. Wow. And so that was 100% of the income that I was making DJing was going into fuel for the truck and out the tailpipe. Okay. And so, but what Beth did was she said, look, there's other ways you can do this. If it's too caustic, dangerous, not practical, whatever, you can modify the physical property instead of the chemical property, which means you can heat it. It's almost like if you have a stick of butter in a pan, like butter you can't pump, but if you get it hot and melt it, you can pump it. Vegetable oil is kind of similar, where when it's cold, it's thick. And when it gets hot, it melts down. You can pump it. Yeah. So she said, there's this other tech called straight vegetable oil. It's just environmentally friendly, but you got to modify the vehicle instead of the fuel. Why don't you give this a try? And so I thought about it and thought, okay, this would be really interesting. And I contacted a company that did straight vegetable oil fuel systems and bought a kit, installed it on the Hummer, and it worked. And it burned it was great. I saved $25,000 or $30,000 the first year I did it, and I was able to burn recycled cooking oil, and it was like. Beth was happy because it was saving all the seals in Alaska. I was happy because I could monster truck through wherever I wanted to monster truck through, and it cost me almost nothing to do. And my business brain kicked in, and I was like, if I can do this and get all the environmentalists that hate me for driving a Hummer off my back, and I can reduce my operating cost, there has to be other fleets that are interested in similar things. Like, think about like FedEx or like all the local buses or like all these other companies that have fuel expense related problems. Yeah. So I decided kind of in that experiment, which was kind of a school-based experiment, to turn that into a business. But the problem was school was going to be my way of doing that because that was when I was like in 10th grade or so.
Yeah, so you couldn't leave yet, right? Or
no.
What did you have to do? You had to get through.
Yeah, so in Virginia, I think at 16 to 17 years old, you're not allowed to drop out of school. You can get your parents' permission and you can go take a class and then you can kind of you can get your GED and then you can end, but you can't just quit until I think you have to be 18 to do that. And so I thought, well, I want to get into business. And if I get my GED, then I can get into business earlier. The last 2 years of school were not going to be there was no way. I was going to figure out a way to not be in class as much as I could be. And so I hatched a plan to go get this GED so I could start a business so that I could do biofuels. And that was kind of my goal. That was where you asked earlier, did I do it just for the sake of getting out of class or getting out of it for business? And this is kind of where it shifted into, I'm actively pursuing a business and therefore I need to get school out of my way. And that's kind of where I started
Well,
doing
it sounds like you had run the DJ business for a few years at that point. So you had proven that you could make money.
Yeah.
And then when the biofuel idea came about, like you had a path then out of school. But you said something earlier that I thought was interesting, where the public high school that you went to, you said, I didn't fit their mold there and their mold didn't fit me.
Yeah.
And I think you thinking about it that way is interesting because, you know, the paths are kind of set for us. We go to school and it's almost like, I know for me, it's like, well, if I don't fit this mold, then there's something wrong with me and I have to figure out how to fit that mold. But I still see you do it today where you're like, no, they don't fit me, so they can adjust to me versus the other way around.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting way to look at it.
It's a unique perspective because you can't, like from my shoes, I can't really look extrospectively at what that looks like. It's only looking inside of myself.
Yeah.
But when I think about, ultimately, either you move or they move. That's any business, any problem. It's like someone's got to make an adjustment. And so I think so often people think that they have to figure out how to fit inside of someone else's box. But if you just break the rules, change the rules. If you don't like the rules, figure out how to change them. And in business, like in our business, I mean, I can write whatever rules I want. And we have the NFPA and we have all the things. They're like, these are the things that have to go on fire trucks. But outside of that, do whatever you want. If you want to make a light that can fly to the moon, if you have a customer willing to pay you for it, go for it.
Yeah.
And ultimately, business is a great test because someone has to be willing to buy the service that you're creating. And so it allows me kind of flexibility in business. And this is obviously a lighting product business today. But in any business, it was like, I want to create a product that I think someone's going to buy. And it's up to me to decide how that occurs. And so either I can break out of the system and get into business, or I can bring people into my camp and say, hey, this is what I do. You should do it too. And they can kind of join and go on that same journey. And so it's...
So for people who feel like they don't fit that mold, like what would you say or what advice would you have when they just don't feel like they're maybe that traditional student?
Just go for it. And don't be pig-headed the fact that everything is going to work out, because it won't.
Yeah.
I mean,
were you scared of failing when you started those first few businesses?
No. I mean, I just did not give a shit. I think that ultimately, you have to have some level of pig-headedness to be able to just get your head down and go. And ultimately, I think being conditioned when I was young and not having tons of friends and like whatever I did wasn't enough to get the popular kids to be my friends. So I knew like, okay, it's not going to happen. So instead of getting hung up on how do I make whatever, I remember one guy wanted to be my friend. He wouldn't be my friend. Then fine.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I guess I'll picture. We call him Fathead now. So it's great. Everyone's got a nickname. But anyway, then fine, go do your own thing. And so I've always just said like, screw it. If you don't like what I'm doing, then you have to be, empathetic. And there's like some of that whole interpersonal things that you learn, I think, as time goes on and you get older. I mean, you get better at that. But you still have to just, nope, I'm doing it. I'm going to try it. And you got to be willing to open your ears when you need to, but close them when people are telling you the wrong things.
Yeah. So I do want to move into the biofuel business, which we know is MGE. But as you look back on not following a traditional path in school, is there anything that you wish had been different? Do you look at people who followed a traditional path and got degrees and did all that? And do you have any sort of, not regrets, but I don't know, anything you look back on about the path you chose?
I don't. I mean, I think that the path I chose is my good enough diploma is the GED, and it was like good enough to get the hell out of school. I was so tired of that process that it was the greatest thing that ever happened. But, I do think what I don't like about the path I took is that people in general look down on it. And they like, whether it's peers in the space, I mean, I feel so out of place when I'm in a room full of like brilliant business people, and the people in our space are like degrees are everywhere.
Yeah.
And then I'm in a room and I'm like, well, I have my good enough diploma, but I didn't like go to like, oh, you went to Harvard Business School. Cool. Like, that's really cool. I went to like, a little bit of high school, and then I said, get out of here. Yeah. So, I do think about it all the time, but I don't think that it hasn't held me back. Yeah. And it is something that for anybody in similar shoes, I would say go for it. I mean, you just have to move the things out of the way that are in the way and get to what is useful and what is helpful. And so I use it as a tool. And do I regret anything? No. I mean, I think there are many lessons I learned, and I would do things maybe differently, in hindsight's 2020, and maybe in business, because the MGE business not succeeding was something that I think not badly, but I think
Yeah.
it sucks, it's embarrassing. But I also think that the lessons I learned there, it cost me more than a college education, and I learned as much as a college education without ever having to go to college. So it was
Well, and I think
hands-on.
that, when you're going through it, you don't know what the future will look like. But I know that now we look back and you did learn so much. And so tell me about MGE. It stood for Massa Green Enterprises.
Yep,
So
that's it.
tell me about the start and how, what that business was about and the story of it.
Yeah, so that business converted large fleet diesel vehicles to burn recycled waste cooking oil.
Okay.
And that was called straight vegetable oil. And that kind of started with the Hummer. When the Hummer, I was trying to reduce fuel cost, give you the green marketing image and the green money business, value image. I could save fleet owners 50% the cost of diesel fuel. And I would lock them into a 3 or 5 year contract for the fuel. We would supply the fuel. We'd render cooking oil all around in Northern Virginia. And then they would basically have a reduction in fuel costs. They'd buy the fuel system from me, and then we'd sell them the fuel. And the fuel was basically just rendered cooking oil. But the whole magic of the business was that I found a way to automate the fuel system, and I didn't actually design it from the ground up. There was a company that did some stuff for like these little Mercedes and small vehicles. Okay. And there was another company that did automated switching control systems. And I basically married a robust fuel system that was designed for a different vehicle class to an automated fuel system controller that was designed for a different vehicle class. And then I made the robust system bigger. Okay. So like imagine filters, like, if you got to pump a lot of fluid through a filter, if you're pumping a lot of fluid, you need a pretty big filter because otherwise it'll end up restricting it. And so we basically added larger filters and then added this automated controller. The whole magic though was that a fleet owner, like we did some FedEx vehicles up in Northern Virginia, and you could put a $10 an hour fleet vehicle driver who might be of probably similar education level to me, but maybe not experienced in the tech space or other spaces. That's just like, I'm just a fleet driver. I don't want to play slap and tickle with all these switches and gauges and try and make the fuel system work. Yeah. I just want to drive the route. Like I get paid by package, not paid by, fuel savings. Yeah. So the fleet owner didn't want to have to teach their employee how to drive this fuel system. They just need them to drive the vehicle. Yeah. So I created an automated fuel system that allowed fleet owners to just drive vehicles. And so it would start on vegetable oil, it would start on diesel, flip over to vegetable oil, and then switch back when they were done. And the fleet owner could just fill the tank, send the truck out to go, and they'd be good, good for their route for the day. And so that business, we did some small vehicles. We did a couple of environmentalists, like kind of green vehicles, but then we specialized in the H1 Hummers, the big diesel trucks, buses, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And
did you have to go and collect the oil, or where did people get the oil?
Yeah. So it was funny. The bigger companies, they have these like big vac trucks, and they would drive around, and you would set these bins out. They called them park hands. We'd set these big bins out behind the restaurants, and then people would throw their oil in it. And at the time, this is before like the biofuel craze had gone nuts. So at the time, people were paying to get rid of their cooking oil, and they would pay companies to come suck
like
the oil.
Restaurants and
like Arby's, Ruby Tuesdays, Chinese restaurants, and that oil was, generally it would cost some amount. It was paid per pound or paid per ton. You would pay to get rid of it. And so what I would do is I would say, hey, look, instead of you paying to get rid of this oil, I will put a bin out behind your business and I'll collect the oil for free. And so we had no cost in it. Yeah. And our customers our customers, whatever you would call these people, the restaurants would give it to us, and they liked it because we got rid of the oil. Yeah. And our customers liked it because we gave them fuel for half the cost. Right. We would basically go render it, but the problem is you got to transport it.
Oh yeah.
And so moving cooking oil around, especially dirty oil, is actually not super easy. So I made friends with a guy that ran a septic business up in Northern Virginia. Another high school dropout, GED, like business guy. Really? Yeah, super cool guy. Called 5 Star Septic. I love this guy. But anyway, so he would let me. I'd have to climb in the back of the trucks and jet the trucks out to get all the turds and stuff out of them.
Truck.
Yeah, and then once the trucks were clean,
this is the work boot part.
Yeah, this is the part where a lot of people are like too scared to actually go to work. So then once the trucks were clean, we'd go render oil. I'd suck up oil all over the DC area, give him a cut for it, and then when we were done, I would just spray the inside. I'd get back in and jet the insides of the trucks back out so they were clean, and then he'd go put them back in service for septic work. But basically, I would then take all that oil back to the shop, and we'd settle it in these big tanks, and the water would settle off to the bottom, and the bad stuff would kind of raise to the top. So you would then take the septic truck, and you would stick the vac tube. Once it settled, you did it for like 2 weeks. You'd heat it up and let it settle. Stick the tube all the way to the bottom and suck all the water off, and then pull it all the way to the top and suck all the nasty stuff off. And then you could send that off to the wastewater treatment plant, and the oil was still in the middle. And so, because you can't just send oil, you can't send that to the treatment plant. But when it's just water or food particles at the bottom, that's just wastewater. Yeah. So that was basically like gray water. And anyway, so we did that for years. The business grew. The misstep I made there, though, this was kind of the problem.
Tell me about the challenges.
Yeah, the challenge in that business, it's kind of twofold. One, I wasn't a mechanic. I knew nothing about diesel.
Oh, and you were modifying these mechanical parts of the vehicle.
Yeah, but like you had to be a diesel mechanic. And so, and I was also like a child. I was like 18 or 19. I mean, so baby. So nobody would take me seriously. I remember going into these big fleet shops and they'd be like, get the hell out of here. I'm not going to let you touch my $200,000 garbage truck. There's no way. I'd be like, yeah, but I'm going to do it. And they're like, stop. Like, you're going to save me all this money. You're going to blow the thing up. The engine costs more than you're going to save me. So no way. So one of the things I had to do was hire some really good help that knew diesel engines. Yeah. But the problem that I found was that thinking like the way I thought and being a tenured diesel mechanic sometimes didn't align well. It's like the way you work in a shop and I don't know. I mean, some of my greatest mentors, there was a guy named Jose that he actually worked at the Hummer dealership when I bought the Hummer. He was the mechanic there. And Jose was brilliant, phenomenal mechanic. The military guy, had worked in a very strict process for a long time. And I didn't know anything about business and nothing about, mechanics. And so I would try and like, hey, can you do this? Can you do that? And he's like, Sam, it doesn't work that way. You have to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Again, that like process and the structure.
Yeah. And I probably should have listened to Jose a little more because we're still friends to this day, but he had some very good things that would have been very successful in terms of implementation, like things like don't send parts out unfinished. And so like we would send a fuel system out, be like, customer wants to pick it up this afternoon. Fine, let them pick it up. It's not done. But they'd pick it up and then they'd go home and be like, hey, this thing doesn't work. And I'd be like, yeah, you wanted to pick it up this afternoon. The thing doesn't run. And Jose was like, you have to finish the job or tell them no. Yeah. But I was too scared to say no.
Okay.
And so like those are rookie moves. Like when you grow a little bit in business, then you kind of know like, tell the rest of the story to the customer. Yeah, hey, if you pick your truck up today, it won't be done, and therefore the fuel system won't work. And I would just be like, yeah, you can pick it up, fine. So, I mean, it's silly, but it was something I learned. The other kind of hard thing was we were growing so quick. I tell people all the time in business, don't outgrow the speed of your team and outgrow the speed of your capabilities or your experience. Yeah. And so we went to acquire one of our suppliers in that business, and the supplier had basically this valve system, and it's a very actually not that complex, but it didn't work. The valves they had purchased. And when we went to acquire them, the valves that we went to acquire didn't do the job that the only function the valve needed to do, it didn't do because it was misspec'd. There was some problem. And there were all these valves ordered. Wow. And so the process of that acquisition, not doing proper due diligence, not understanding the tech well enough, the right thing to do would have been understand the tech, do the due diligence, really know how the valves work, really understand how the customer vehicles work, really know the team, but I mean, I didn't know. We were growing so quickly. We did 1 vehicle, 200 vehicles, 2,000 vehicles, in a year's time. And so in order to scale at that speed, I didn't spend the time. So I thought, the revenue is good. I'll just go ahead and make this move. And ultimately what it ended up doing was costing us the capital, the time, space, and the momentum. When I stopped, all of a sudden, every vehicle we were converting, we had switched this new valve. But the new valve didn't work. So then I had no backup plan and I had no other valves. And in the fire service, they say, have a plan, a backup, and a backup to the backup. Well, I learned that 15 years later. Yeah. So in that stage, it was like, all I had was the plan and the plan didn't work and then the business collapsed. And so we got out of it, ultimately we paid the debts, we got rid of the employees, closed the building, and we got out of it basically breaking even. But I mean, that was 3 years of time that I invested into it and built this whole business. And it was really embarrassing when that didn't go well because it was like, you had to tell people you messed up. Yeah. It sucked.
It's done. Yeah.
Yeah.
So where do you go from there?
So from there, I was living in a barn behind a water ski school. Obviously, we met, I don't know if anybody knows this, but Kim and I met water skiing and at a ski school.
So
in
you finished
Lillington.
MGE, and MGE was based in DC, but you had grown up water skiing in North Carolina at Coble Ski School.
Yep. Favorite place in the whole world. Yeah. In Lillington, Lily Vegas, North Carolina, big town. And
so between MGE closing, and I kind of met you as it was winding down.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I've never seen something like this before. You moved down to North Carolina. Yeah. So the biofuel business basically exploded. And when it did, then it was like, okay, what am I going to go do? I didn't want to go move back home. I didn't have another business that I was going to jump into. Yeah. So I thought the other thing I was good at was coaching kids how to water ski. Yeah. I mean, that sounded like a good idea. And I loved Lillington where I'd worked there when I was in high school, kind of age 15, 16, summer camp. Yeah. And so I moved down there, and the lady that runs it, named April, and her husband, Chris, were fantastic friends and fantastic coaches and mentors. And they were like, come work for us. You're handy. Sure. You can work the ski school in the summertime, teach the kids. And in the wintertime, fix the boats, work on the ski jumps, do all the maintenance and stuff around the facility. And so I did. I moved to Lillington and kind of was just between
things. And there's an interesting tie back to the biofuel business. While I was there, I can't remember if it was a winter or spring. Anyway, it was off season. I get a call, and from the biofuel business, I used to I did this project with the company that made the Hummer, AM General, because we made the fuel system fit in the tanks of the Hummer, obviously for my truck and then some customer vehicles. So AM General invited me out to tell them about how this fuel system worked and on and on and on. So anyway, they did, and they told me, hey, we have a customer of ours that wants you to convert their truck. And I was like, well, just have your customer reach out. And they were like, basically, no, the customer wants to maintain anonymity, but we'd like you to convert the truck. And I was like, I'm not doing it. So the business closed. I was living at the ski school. I get a phone call one day. And it was like, restricted number. I'm like, this is weird. And I answer it, and it's like, hello. And said, this is the governor of California's office. I'd like to speak with you. I was like, oh, this is obviously a scam. And it's like, no, don't hang up. Governor Schwarzenegger has a fleet of Hummers.
Oh, Arnold Schwarzenegger was
and he was the governor at the time. Yeah, and he's like, I want to have these vehicles burn cooking oil, and he'd bought a fuel system from another company that didn't work very well.
Because he has H1 Hummers?
Yeah, he was the original Hummer guy. He took the military Humvee, paid AM General to civilianize it. Like, it was the coolest thing ever. He was like, for someone that was into that vehicle class, it was like the idol.
Really?
Like the guy. Yeah. So it was really cool to get the call. And I was like, look, I don't do these fuel systems anymore. So it doesn't matter how bad you want it, I'm out. And they were like, no, we really want it. We hear you're the guy. AM General says you're the one to do it. So whatever it takes in this proposal, we want to do it. I said, okay. So I whipped something together and I sent it to him. And I was like, the warranty's as long as the driveway. I'm not like, I don't do this anymore, but if you really want me to do it, it's going to cost you, whatever it was, 10 grand. I said, great. Get on a plane tomorrow. Next day are the parts and we'll get going. I was like, no, what do you mean tomorrow? And they're like, we want to do this right now.
You didn't have anything else to do.
I had nothing to do. I was living in the ski school. So I did. It was great. And I converted
you flew out there. I think we need to hear a little bit of meeting Governor Schwarzenegger. You flew out there. Did you get to drive his vehicles? Did you meet him? Actually,
it was really cool. So I flew out and I landed at Santa Monica somewhere, like at the airport. And then so we drive over and we go to the Santa Monica Executive Airport. And there was a hangar there that had like all the original, very first H1 Hummer ever made, like the one. I saw it and I was just like, oh my, like my face was melting. I was so excited. And then they had like this amazing off-road four-wheel drive Lamborghini vehicle. I think it's called the LM002. It's one of these like nostalgic old school 80s amazing mechanical design vehicles. This is like the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life, all these Hummers. And the guy that I was with, who was a production manager for Arnold, said, hey, you need to, this is the truck, take it down. And I had a friend in Vista that ran a Hummer repair business. And I was like, hey, can I run this truck down here? I want to do this fuel system, but I need a shop in California. And he's like, yeah, you can use the bays. So I get in this truck, they throw me the key, like didn't check my ID, didn't like ask who is this guy. I'm sitting in the truck and like on the dash are Arnold Schwarzenegger sunglasses. And like, and then like in the side he had this little aviation gauge that sat kind of next to the cup holder. It was a special thing that he'd added. And I'm sitting in this truck and I'm like, okay, I guess I'll drive down to Vista. And the guy was just like, all right, thanks so much. And I just like, I drive out of the airport and I'm just like, is this real life? Am I driving Arnold Schwarzenegger's Hummer? And I just, like 19 years old, I drive down, pulled into the shop where we're going to do the work. And I was like, holy shit. The floor mats literally had the seal of like the governor of the state of California. It was so awesome. Cool. So anyway, I did the conversions. And they worked pretty good. And then, but I had asked, hey, I'd really like to meet Governor Schwarzenegger. I think it'd be really cool. And so we set up this media day, and the California Highway Patrol has to shut down the area, sweep the building, do this whole thing. And so they shut it down. He flew in and came over to the shop, and we got some pictures, and I got to go through the trucks. And it was super, I mean, like, salt of the earth, really cool guy. Really? It was so funny. The Hummers, the windshield's always fog. So, I asked him, like, hey, do you have the same experiences that everybody else has? And he's like, yep, I love the Hummers just like everyone else does. Foggy windshields and all. And it was like, okay. So we all kind of, everyone that's been in that space knows the vehicle. And it was really cool to see how connected he was to the four-wheel drive community. To the, he's obviously environmentally minded. He's from California, right? That's what people are there. But he was looking for the ecologic benefit and the cost savings actually wasn't that big a deal. So I was like, oh, we can go get some recycled oil. And his guy was like,
I don't want your Chick-fil-A oil.
Yeah, I don't want your nasty oil. Just go to the grocery store and buy new stuff. I'm like, it's $20 a gallon. And the guys are like, just please. So we did. But it was great because it was, I mean, honestly, his Hummers burning cooking oil had a smaller carbon footprint than a Prius.
Wow.
And so it worked. I mean, it was a big deal for them to be able to say, these vehicles are powered by biofuel. They have a small carbon footprint. And so, and it was kind of fun. Yeah, it was cool. So
I think the other thing I took away from that, and actually I thought about it when you mentioned, reaching out to Thomas Bus and being like, yes, I want to come and have a tour, is you're so audacious about just thinking you can be in a room with anybody, right? Like I would be like, no, I'm not going to talk to an executive. Like, who am I? But you're just like, yeah, I'll meet with the CEO, or yeah, please bring Arnold down here. And just to think, that you're just kind of brave enough to assume that they would want to be in the room with you as well.
I would hope they do. It's actually funny. I've never really thought about it that way, but it is like, I think about the people that are just like, if you need to meet with, I remember there was a guy named Mr. Willie at the grade school that I went to, or at the middle school. And Willie was the custodian and the gatekeeper to the whole world. So Willie and I and Mr. Cooper, there were the two custodians there. We made really good friends. And whether it's the CEO or it's the governor of California or it's Mr. Willie and Mr. Cooper, not just being friends with, but genuinely connecting with the people that are the right people to help you move things forward is really important in business, in life, in everything. And so I think that, not just being audacious to sit in a room with someone, but it's also like, who do I need to be with, or who do I need to invest in the relationship with in order for both of us to get something valuable out of it?
Okay.
And in the schools, it was like, Mr. Cooper was responsible for the buildings and Mr. Willie was as well. And we'd sit there and chew the fat and talk about the buildings and talk about the things. The PA system was messed up one day. Well, I knew how to fix the PA system. And so, then when I needed a favor or a hand, hey, can I borrow the genie lift so I can hang this truss up? It was like, yeah, I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine. And I helped him do his job and he helped me do mine. And then in larger business and in bigger opportunities, whether it's working with someone from a major fire apparatus manufacturer or it's working with a defense contractor or the governor of California, what's valuable for both of us? Yeah. And, whether it's not just like advancing a career, but like if it's helping to grow a business that's going to help do more impact for people, or it's, helping a big business like a large fire truck manufacturer or the governor of California reduce their carbon footprint. I mean, I had the tool to do that. And so why wouldn't they want to sit down with me?
Yeah, I think you've always found ways to bring value to other people as well. So when you're looking at somebody you want to meet with because you see that there's something that they have that you could utilize, you figure out a way that you could add value to them. And I think also it's so easy to hold people up on pedestals, our idols or people who are successful. We kind of hold them out as, these great people that kind of sit above us. But you've always kind of been like, they're just people too. Like
everybody deserves a seat at every table. Like if you want to go for it, but you better darn well make sure you have a reason to be there.
Earn it still.
So earn it. Yeah, it's like, so many people put their hand out first and they're like, hey, I want you to give me something. Yeah. But my whole philosophy with any of those people, the people I deal with today, it's like, what value can I provide to you? Yeah. And if I can provide you value, then why wouldn't you want to help with the things that I need? Yeah. And sometimes like there are asks, I think, and asks are hard. And it's a hard thing you have to learn how to do is like, hey, I actually need something. I don't have something to say back. Yeah. But genuinely or generally, if you are cognizant of the balance that has to occur in any relationship, then if you have no value to provide someone, then don't reach out to them. But if you do, then reach out and talk about it. And there's no reason that you or I shouldn't be able to sit at a table or that someone else should be able to sit at our table if there's a reason. I mean, make the reason if you want that to be the case. It could just be that you want to do it. But if you, okay, fine, then engineer up a reason that helps everyone succeed, then fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's interesting. So I think that it brings us to a good spot now. You've been working at the ski school. Was doing Arnold Schwarzenegger's vehicles and the fact that they called you after the kind of embarrassing failure of MGE, and you learned a lot. So I don't even want to call it a failure because you learned, and now I've learned so much in what we utilize in today's business in HiViz. So, but was it a good kind of final validation to be like, no, I did know what I was doing. I just probably could have done some things differently.
I think it was. And I think more so a story that I can tell people to validate that what I did. More so than because even on those vehicles, I think there are things I could have done better. Okay. And there are things that I would have done differently. And I actually forgot to hook a return line up to the fuel system. And one day I was teaching a class a year later and they called me like, hey, Arnold's truck's on the side of the road, spraying oil everywhere. Oh, nice. You're on the next plane coming out here to fix this because no one else knows how. And I was like, so I flew out there and fixed it. But anyway, no, I do think it was. I mean, I've used that story when folks are like, do I really want to talk to you? It's like, well, here's my background. I used to work on Hummers. I had the opportunity to convert Governor Schwarzenegger's vehicles to burn cooking oil. Yeah. And it kind of weave that in. And it's like, oh, okay. So yeah.
I think that's another hard thing to do because people call it bragging a lot of times or name dropping or whatnot. But sometimes it is people do want validation of knowing what you've done. I mean, it's why a resume kind of exists, but you kind of do it in conversations you have with people that it's okay to...
Name dropping for the sake of name dropping is stupid. But if there's a reason, it's like, hey, listen, I just want to establish that I'm credible in a space. Yeah,
establishing credibility, I think.
Yeah, it's like, you don't want to dwell on it. And you want to be like, oh, yes, I was best friends with the governor. I mean, I didn't even, I didn't know the guy. Right. I spent 20 minutes with the guy. But, the ability to say, hey, these are the types of people that I work with. These are the things I've done in the past. Yeah. And it can be on any scale. I mean, it can even be like, okay, what's credibility with the the local whatever. Hey, I'm a
Yeah.
fireman in Mills River, and I'm here because yada yada yada.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. You're
Yeah.
here for like you have to be able to establish credibility that's relevant to the conversation that you're having,
Right.
or else, like
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, we were looking for a lady the other day in town. It was a dementia patient, got lost. You knock on the door. If I knocked on someone's door in the middle of, we're in Western North Carolina, like I'm gonna get shot. But I'm wearing a fire uniform. Say, hey, this is what we're doing. I'm here on behalf of whatever, and this is because okay. And then it's like, oh, okay. And in the lighting business, when I do a demo talking to customers, I talk about my experiences as, hey, this is the fire academy schooling I went to. This is the credential that I carry, and it's just sometimes you have to establish that credibility.
Well, I think that this is a good place to get into HiViz, and I'll say that, I mean, you were still like only 19 or 20 at this stage, and you and I met when we were 18, and I already remember just being like, holy cow, this guy has lived like double the amount of life that I have in the same short period of time, and it was a really impressive story, all the things that you had learned on your own, because I'm a very, very traditional student. I love a structure. Give me that path. I'm going to check all the boxes. And you were just like, screw the boxes. I'm making my own boxes. And I thought that was so interesting. So I think it's a great point to get into the start of HiViz and the journey that we've had over the past 10 years, if you're ready.
Yeah, 10. It's been longer than 10 years. We met when we were 18. How old are we now? 32? So
Yeah.
it's been almost
Okay.
15 now.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, no, definitely. Let's jump into it.
All right. So what was the original idea or original intention for HiViz? HiViz LED lighting is what it started as.
Yes. Well, so I think it's probably worth, as we're starting to tell the story of the name HiViz. So originally,
true, yeah.
so Cam and I were dating long distance from Australia and here. What did you do for a job when we first met?
I was a seed picker.
And what kind of seeds were they?
So we would go out. I lived in a beautiful part of Australia where there was lots of native trees and flora and fauna. And we would go out and pick seeds off trees that the government would then use to regenerate areas that had been impacted by bushfire, or wildfire that you call it here. So we'd go out and have these buckets on our back, and you would go out there. We would have arborists who would cut the limbs down, and then we would scurry in there and like pick all the seeds off and put them in the bucket. And then they would get dried and the seed would be collected, and then it would go regenerate new areas. And so we worked like in these remote parts of Victoria and Australia.
Because they would only, they would drop them on active fires or something. So they would.
Not active fires.
Like, weren't they like they only sprouted once the heat got to them, or they had to dry, something about dry?
we would pick the whole capsule, and then they would dry it, which would make the actual seed drop out.
Oh, and the seed would fall.
Yeah,
oh,
so then
that's
they would
how
have
that
just
worked.
the seed, and then they would plant the seed after a bushfire had gone through. They would then plant it to make the forest regrow. So that's what I was doing when we met.
Yes, and I used to always crack up because Cama would go out in the woods. Like, she'd be like 100 miles in the woods by herself or like with two other people. And they had these outfits that were like, we call them reflective vests, like it's get a safety vest on. But they call them high-vis vests. And like everyone in Australia wears high-vis
high
vests.
visibility.
Yes, just in case someone wants to see when you're in the middle of nowhere. Like, who are you trying? You're not going to get run over by anybody. There's no traffic. You're 100 miles from anybody.
It's a staple uniform there.
Yes, it is. I thought they were awesome. And so I used to just kind of make jokes like, oh, and you're HiViz, and we'd point them out all the time. And so when HiViz started,
I actually forgot that this was the reason it was called that.
yeah, because I used to laugh about your outfits all the time. Like, okay. So HiViz was a joke about your uniform name. But but then it worked out well. I mean, because we were in the lighting space. But, the original business idea was not really a business idea. This is, I was living at the ski school.
Yep.
Kind of just playing around. And I thought back in the days of the Hummers and the biofuels, the customers would buy lift kits and tires and lights and like stuff to outfit their vehicles.
Yeah.
And some of the lights they would buy were these off-road light bars. And
It was like when
like
the
new
light bars
cool
were getting in.
first thing. Oh yeah, they were like super sick.
Yeah.
And this company called VisionX, which was based in Seattle, made the first light bar. And it was 12 shades of awesome. Like it was awesome. But they were really expensive. And so I got the idea, why don't I just import a copy of a VisionX light bar? I went on Alibaba.com and I bought a copy of a light bar. And I was just going to try it and see if it was any good because I figured screw it, I can just sell these things to all sorts of people and I'll get light bars in and if I sell enough of them, then I still have the Hummer and I can, like if I make, say, $100 a light bar and a light bar is $500, then I can sell 5 light bars and get the 6th one for free, and I can have that as my personal one.
Yeah, and so I do remember this when we got the first shipment of Alibaba lights, and we were like so excited to unpack them, but we had to earn the money to buy the Alibaba lights buy snow plowing one year. So your mum actually lent you $1,200 to buy a snow plow.
That's
We
true. I
bolted
forgot
it to
about
the
that.
Hummer.
Yep.
And then one winter we drove down to Atlanta and plowed snow. But I think we had to place like a $10,000 stocking order with Alibaba. And then the day the lights came, we were like so excited.
That is right. Yeah. So it was funny. So when we did that snow thing, just so everyone knows, like that was actually funny. That was the money we used to start the business. We made the money plowing, and what we did was we drove to Atlanta, and when it snowed in Atlanta, we were the only plow company in Atlanta that didn't have contracts with all the local companies.
Yeah.
And so Cam and I were like, we were just dating at the time.
Yeah.
And we'd put an ad out, and then people would call. And so we did like all the Lowe's parking lots, and we cut a deal with the news that if they would ride in the vehicle and broadcast from the back of the truck showing our logo and stuff, that we would do their parking lot, and we got free coverage, and we made the money that we needed in order to kind of like just buy the lights, the $10,000 or whatever it was.
Well, we split that.
That's
and
right.
I had to pay my my university fees.
Oh, that's
And I was like,
right.
I really need a cut of this money because I have to pay for my living expense this year.
That's right. I had
And
forgotten
you
about
took
that.
your half and you bought the Alibaba
Lights.
first light. So anyway, they came and that was our first
Yeah, they
LED
came.
lighting.
Yeah, and so what was interesting is, in all of my businesses, there's been people that have invested in me personally, professionally, and sometimes financially. For, like, not unknown reasons, but like, why would someone support this? And so I reached out to a local towing company in Northern Virginia, actually, where I grew up, and said, hey, look, I want to start this business. I'm going to bring these light bars in. And I want to sell you some of these light bars. But instead of just saying, this is kind of like you asked in the last thing about, like, how do you end up in the room with a CEO so comfortably? And I reached out and said, listen, I am looking for a business mentor that will teach me about the towing industry because I think the towing industry is one that I could sell these lights to. And he said, like, yeah, I'll come teach whatever. So come down, he shows me his truck, talks to me about the business. And he's like, yeah, I'll even buy some of these lights from you if you want. I was like, oh, sweet. So sold him a couple of the lights, and I'll give you the spoiler. All the lights failed. Every single one of them they were garbage. Don't buy lights from Alibaba because they're trash.
They had a warranty.
They had a 1-year warranty that was like as good as the paper
We filed
was
the
written
claim
on.
for the warranty and they were like, yeah, ship them back. And it was going to be like $1,000 to ship them back. And we had no money to ship them back.
Yeah, the lights were only worth like $400, so it was garbage. So yeah, but so that guy, so I sold some lights to him, and I thought, okay, I'll start a business that sells these Alibaba knockoff VisionX light bars, and I'll get enough to get a free one for me, and I'll sell a few to this guy, and everything will be happy. And the problem was, number one, the lights from Alibaba were garbage, and they broke. And number two, they had my name on them, and so they had the HiViz name on them. And in the MGE days, I was so maybe not disappointed, but when that business failed, it was so like embarrassing because of my name attached to it and my goodwill that I never wanted to let that occur again.
Yeah.
And so in the early days of HiViz, I sold the lights to the tow guy, and then I went straight down to a trade show in Florida called the Florida Professional Records of Florida, PWOF show.
It was a tow truck trade show.
Yeah, tow truck expo. It was like in a parking lot of a Hilton.
Okay.
And I set up and I brought these light bars.
So you thought like, hey, towing is an opportunity here.
Yeah, I thought, because I figured like tow truck guys, like who works at night? Like it's got to be people.
Yeah, true.
like,
Okay,
doing,
so
like,
that was the
nighttime work.
question. Who works at night?
Yeah, and so I tried to sell these off-road light bars to the tow operators, and the one guy bought a few, and then they all failed. And so the push came to shove, and I was like, all right, well, I have my name attached to these things. I've sold a few to a tow truck guy, and as I was at that show, I found out that the lights were too expensive for most tow truck operators, unless you're the big heavy wreckers, like rollback. They're going to turn the truck in 3 or 4 years anyway.
Okay.
They're just as happy with a flashlight between their teeth as they are like these big scene lights. So it wasn't quite the right market, and I was finding out that the product was garbage and it was failing. So I get back from the Florida Tow Show, and I called VisionX, the real company that made the light bars that I bought the imitations of. And I was basically like, hey, listen, I bought a bunch of knockoffs, and I started this little business, and it didn't work because they aren't good. And I'm curious if you would let me become a dealer of y'all's products. If I buy some stuff, I'm going to warranty these parts that we sold that failed. And if you let me buy some stuff in, then I can become like a VisionX dealer and sell the authentic stuff.
Yeah.
The problem was, the stuff was way more expensive, like way more expensive. Obviously for good reason, because the Chinese stuff was garbage. And I needed to figure out how to do that. So I did. I spent the last dollars I had to buy light bars to give back to the tow guys that
So
bought
you
the stuff from
replaced all
me.
the ones that failed.
Yeah, because my name was on them. And
Yeah.
so HiViz started as like a toy business that turned into this like flaglering, failing venture with off-road lights from China that weren't any good.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, shit, now I'm a bona fide dealer or distributor for this company called VisionX.
Yeah.
I have a market that doesn't actually want to buy expensive lights, and I don't really know what the right next path is.
Well, and I think your interest in I remember asking you like why LED lighting and why this tech. And you have always had a fascination with like electronics. Like for your parents have told me that growing up, you used to ask for Radio Shack gift cards for your birthday and Christmas. And then you would go buy things and like take them apart. And so the electronics like curiosity in your mind was lent itself to being interested in these LED light bars, and the market was kind of in that space at the time.
Brand new tech. It was like the leading edge. I mean, everyone had bought on the Hummer. I had off-road lights. Like there were old Casey highlights. There were 55-watt old school lights, and then like this light bar was like just totally changed the way you thought about lighting. And in the DJ business, I was all into lighting. I mean, we had stage lights and theatrical lighting.
Okay, yeah.
And then I thought, the electronic interest. Yeah, I thought it was a great market, and I thought that it was going to be the ticket, but I needed, after that towing show and after I'd replaced all those failed products, I had to figure out, okay, great. Now I'm kind of like pregnant with this business because like I'm at the time we're just a dealer, and now we're a much different business than we were then. But at the time I was like, all right, so I need to find someone that can afford the product. And so the fire market came about totally by mistake.
Okay.
When I was at one of the Florida Tow Show, there was this guy from a company that made these flip up light towers for fire trucks. It was a company called Wilbert. You guys are probably familiar if you know the fire service space.
Yeah, good friends.
Yeah, good friends of ours. And the guy's like, look, this is like a $20,000 stick that's got 4 lights on it. And I was like, how the hell are you selling? I'm having trouble selling a $300 light bar, and you're killing it with these $20,000 sticks. And he's like, well, they're not really for tow trucks. They're for like, you can use them on a tow truck, but our primary market's fire trucks for these things. I was like, fire trucks. Interesting. So tell me more. And the guy's like, well, the fire service has to last this long. It's got to be super durable. And the wheels are turning. I'm like, well, I know the VisionX stuff is the perfect product for the fire market. It's durable, it's industrial, it's reliable. The stuff that I bought when I actually sampled it to warranty out those other parts, I was blown away.
Yeah.
So, when I got back from the Florida Tow Show, I kind of recognized that towing wasn't the right market.
Yeah, because they didn't need or want expensive stuff.
It didn't have to be. Because like if a light goes out on a tow truck, it's like you just get another tow truck out or you grab a flashlight. And it's like usually after the primary critical incident is over. But when you think about it, and what I know now is that if grandma's pinned in a vehicle and you're trying to cut her out before she dies, your light can't go out because you can't do the job in the dark. Right now is critical. And so people are willing to spend a little more money on
to get reliability.
Mission critical, reliable, super high-end tech.
So this seed had been planted about the fire industry.
Yeah.
And again, you were like an 18-year-old boy had grown up in Centerville who had lime green trucks. Like you were aware of how cool fire trucks were.
I mean, I thought they were sick. Since I was a little kid, I thought they were sick. But I never really thought like about being a firefighter or like doing a business in the fire space.
Yeah.
And honestly, when I first started, I was like, oh, the fire people have money. And so that's why I thought like I needed to find a customer for the product.
Yeah.
And so
how did you start?
So at the ski school where I was living and halfway working, the guy that used to work on our boats ran a little auto repair business in town, and he was a firefighter in the local town.
Okay.
And his brother or his cousin or something like that was the fire marshal. And so Ron, the guy from the repair shop, says, hey, TJ is my cousin, and I can probably reach out and get you an audience with the local Fire Chiefs Association.
Wow.
So I was like,
oh yeah,
sign me up. This sounds great.
Yeah.
So I bought and what I found is I was kind of like doing my ask. So I went by like the fire station and asked about like, okay, how do you want this? Like, how do people sell in the fire truck space? And everyone was like, it's a show and tell market. It's a show and tell market. Bring me a demo. Bring me a demo.
They wanted to see it.
They're very like hands on. And this is like, the fire service. What I know now is like it's a little bit sometimes old school.
Yeah.
But I was thinking like, oh yeah, I'll just flick them a PDF with the catalogs. I'll just like these people wanted to see like, bring me the actual thing and let me bang on it and see if it breaks.
Okay.
Because they didn't trust me. Like the most trusted person in the world is a firefighter, and the least trusted person in the world is a salesperson.
Yeah. So true.
When I was showing up, it was like,
they were like, yeah, no,
I'm not a fireman. I don't know anything about this. I'm just like, so
did he get you that meeting at the Chiefs meeting?
So he did, yeah. And prior to the Chiefs meeting, I bought I found out that I needed to have demos. Demo was the big thing. So bring the equipment, let the people see it, and that they wanted to see it on these demonstrative vehicles, so these demo trucks. So I decided that I loved the Hummers. I thought that was cool. I had the Hummer, but it wasn't quite the right vehicle for the fire service. So I thought, if you've ever seen the Transformers movie, they have that H2. His name is Ratchet. And it's like so sick. It is dope. It's green.
It's lime green.
It's lime green. It's got lights all over it. Okay. And I was like, that is what I need. So I reached out to all my Hummer friends and I was like, can you guys help me build this? And they're like, yeah, it's going to be like $200,000. I'm like, oof, I don't have $200,000. I've got like $2,000.
$2.
Yeah, I was like pretty much broke. So I bought an old diesel Ram 1500 pickup truck or 2500 pickup truck.
I remember it was broken.
The ugliest truck you've ever seen in your life, and it didn't run. The guy thought it needed an engine. I knew it needed an injection pump because I'd done all...
Which you learned from MG.
From MG, I did all the fuel systems stuff. And I was like, I did the test, and I was like, oh yeah, this 100% chance this old Bosch pump's turned up. So I paid $1,000 for it.
Nice.
I threw a heater core in it and an injection pump. Boom, truck comes back to life. And I'm like, all right, now I got to pick up truck.
Now we're in business.
Oh yeah. And then I was like, all right, I need a body that looks like this, Transformers
like
body.
Like a service body.
Like a service body. And I found one on Craigslist. It was like $1,200. And I didn't have $1,200. I had like $200. So I went up, drove all the way to the place, was like, looked at it, checked it out. Like I was real serious. And I was like, all right, I'll offer you $200. And the guy's like absolutely not. I'm not going to take your $200.
Yeah.
So I left. I tumbled between my legs and I was like, damn it. But then he calls me a couple months later and he's like, hey, my truck blew up. I've got to pull it in the shop and do some work. And my shop's only like, yay tall. So my truck won't fit inside. So if you still have those $200 burning a hole in your pocket, I'll take it. But you got to get the body off of my truck.
Yeah.
So I raced up there. I take the bed off of my truck. The folks from the ski school helped me unload it, drive up there, get this service body and set it on the frame rails of my Dodge. Was not designed to fit on it. And I just threw a ratchet trap over it. I'm like, oh yeah, we're good.
Off we go.
So I drive it back. I drive it all the way back to Lillington.
Yeah.
And it looked like hell. I mean, it was the ugliest vehicle you'll ever see in your whole life.
Yeah.
And so it looked like hell. It was the ugliest vehicle you ever seen in your whole life. And I thought, well, I can just paint this thing green and it'll be perfect. It'll look just like it. Cause it had this roof rack. It was like, it was in my head. It was great. Anyway, I go to this local body shop and I was like, hey, what's it going to cost to paint it? And again, I get a quote that's like, way more than the money I had.
Right.
So I go to the local auto parts store and this guy is in the auto parts store and he's like, yeah, we'll sell you the paint. Cause I'm like, I just want to paint this thing green. And he's like, what paint code do you want? But I don't know what the hell a paint code is. I want green. I want like lime green, Transformers green. The guy's like, doesn't work. It's not Home Depot. You got to give him a code. Shit. So he's like, do you even know how to paint a car? And I was like, but I got no clue. I've got $300. And he's like, okay, you don't have enough money for the paint you're going to need. You're going to have to use this stuff called single stage urethane. Okay. And he's like, oh, it's like spray on crayon. You just spray it on a truck. And I'm like, all right.
Crayon.
Oh yeah. So anyway, I get the stuff. I buy the suit. I buy the mask. And the first truck, one of a local welder in town that I knew, some connection. Anyway, we throw this thing together and he's like, look, I got a welding shop in the back. There's this little booth thing you can kind of tinker with. So the first coat I primered in my yard, I'd put pound some posts in, wrapped, and then sprayed the primer coat and then took it down to the welding shop and borrowed this guy's spray booth. And I sprayed the first spray of, this urethane paint on it. But what I didn't know, because I'd never painted anything in my entire life, was that if you spray the first coat real thick, they said, make sure you do multiple coats. So I did one coat and then I let it dry hard like glass. And then when you spray the second coat, it just runs.
You meant to do it while it's still
supposed to they call it tacking up. I didn't even know tacking up was a thing.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I did it and it looked like shit.
Okay.
And I was so proud of it. But
really?
Oh, I thought it looked so good. I remember the smell. I remember I was so proud. It was the ugliest vehicle you'll ever see in your entire life.
Yeah.
But put it together, and then I went to the local sign shop and I sent the guy these graphics. I made up graphics. Amos, famous Amos Signs.
Yeah.
And Amos taught me how to do the whole. Like this dude didn't need to invest in teaching me how to do what he was doing, but he taught me how to do it. So now I do some of our vinyl work, and some of it I don't do very well. But anyway, we put it on the truck, and the truck is our demo. So TJ, who had set up this meeting at the local fire chiefs thing.
Now you have your truck.
Now I've got my truck and I'm ready. It's the incident response vehicle.
Yeah.
It was all set. And people used to be like, what incidents are you responding to? And I'm like, any incident responses, thank you. And the honest truth is the reason it said incident response on the side was because at the towing show, one of the customers that bought a Wilbert light tower had an incident response truck. And it said it on the side of his truck. So he would respond out like a tow truck.
Yeah.
And he would put the tower up and he could bill for every call that had the incident, that had his towers up. And so I just copied the name on the side of his truck because clearly he had a light tower and someone was willing to spend the money on it. So that was why. I just knew nothing about it.
Copy paste.
Yeah, exactly. And so I got all set up and eventually I brought the demo truck, brought my little show and tell pack.
Yeah, so you got the meeting.
And I got the meeting at the local Fire Chiefs Association.
Chiefs Association, okay.
At the Harnett County Fire Chiefs Association.
Yeah. Just side note on the truck, like you were so proud of it and I didn't think twice. I'm like, I guess you know what you're doing. But we realized like years down the track, once we built the second green demo truck, that was a legit truck. Spencer Manufacturing did a fabulous job. And all of the our customers like, oh my God, thank God you guys got rid of that truck. It was horrible. And we were like, really? It was horrible?
I was so proud of it. I used to tell people like, look, we make lights, not trucks. Don't judge us by the truck. But that was really because we had no money. And so it was like the only option we had. But,
All right, we are going to break for day one. It was great to kind of hear the backstory, and we kind of had to set the scene. But next episode, we're going to talk more about kind of present day HiViz and how we got to where we are right now. But as usual, we had to cut Sam off from speaking. So we'll be back. We'll get our curls back in the same place, and look forward to talking to you guys soon.
Deuces. Hey guys, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something. If you want to be on the show or you know someone who should, head over to the2448.com and submit your business. Don't forget to follow and subscribe and give us a 5-star rating. If you thought it was 4 stars, still give us 5 stars or I will find you. See you next time. Later.